He's a little bit parochial, I think it's discussed, but as is the whole of Australia, to be fair.
Carefully,
Yeah,
you'll get driven out.
yeah.
Anyway, Matt Wigham, welcome to the Constraints Collective podcast. Are you okay? You good?
I'm great. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Thanks for the invite, and yeah, looking forward to having a good chat.
Yeah, no, we're looking forward to it as well. I don't think we speak to lots of tennis coaches, but I don't think we've had a tennis coach on the podcast yet, Ian, have we?
I don't think we have, no.
Yeah,
We're just
yeah,
interestingly just writing and doing some materials on tennis at the moment, aren't we?
yeah,
So around the Nadal quotes. So
yeah. Sorry, yeah, I'm with you. Are you okay, Ian? I've not seen you for a
yes,
bit. I
thank
don't
you.
think.
Thank you. Still raining here, so very
Yeah,
unusual for autumn in Brisbane, but we're surviving just about.
yeah. There's no sympathy, but anyway, yeah, I'm glad you're all right. So,
Yeah.
Matt, just to kick us off, like, could you, I don't know, just give us a bit of an overview, maybe a bit of background into yourself and like where you're at and what you're doing, and then we're really curious to jump into your like coaching and how you might view tennis and the way you might set practice up and that sort of thing. That's what we'd like to uh, get into. But yeah, if you could kick us off, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. So I guess a bit about myself, maybe. I'm obviously from the UK originally, and I'm a tennis coach by trade, and I've done that for the last 15 years or so. I absolutely love it. I was a level four coach in the UK to the LTA. And then I've been over in Australia for the last 7 or so years, and I'm a master club professional, qualified coach here in Australia, through Tennis Australia, and I'm also a Tennis Australia coach developer. So I sort of deliver and assess the coach education stuff, like qualifications and courses and stuff that we run here. Um, so and basically, I would say I'm a coaching geek. I'm obsessed um, by the world of coaching, and I guess for me, what I'm interested in is how can we make the biggest difference for the people that we work with. So if we're talking about players, it's um, how can we accelerate the development for them as quickly as possible? Because if they're coming for a lesson, we should be doing that. We hope to beat randomness and leave them in a better place than where they were when they started with us. And I'm also interested in, because of that, well, how do we increase the likelihood of transfer from practice into the match? Because that's where
Hallelujah.
the rubber meets the road, and that's what it's all about, really.
Yeah.
What age groups do you work with, Matt? All age groups
Yeah.
or high performers or?
So yeah, I work in at a tennis club, and I work with a range of ages and stages and abilities. Um, Work with some people just beginning the sport, young children, could be adult beginners, could be what we would call over here in Australia like pennant players. So like if you're UK based or elsewhere in the world, league players. That could be juniors, that could be teenagers, that could be adults. There's a thriving like adult league system over here in Western Australia. And yeah, also with a few what's called like state league players here, or you might call it county tennis standard back in the UK. So yeah, that's the sort of world that I operate in. But really, it's just anybody who is interested in playing tennis, by which I mean like the game of tennis, and not just being what I would call diplomatically like a lesson merchant. So someone who's just coming for lessons because they like skills or something, which does exist, and there's a place for some people for that. Maybe there's a fitness benefit or a social benefit or whatever else. But for me, it has to be about playing the game of tennis and not just taking lessons. So yeah, I don't discriminate on age or level or anything like that or ability, but I do sort of filter out people probably off. I gravitate towards people who are playing matches, and I really think it's important that we get people playing matches as quickly as possible. And actually, on that, we had some research from Tennis Australia, which was, I think, that if people haven't had a competitive experience, i.e., a match in the first 12 months of their tennis journey, there's a 80% chance they'll drop out of the sport. So it's really, as a tennis coach, it's in my best interest that people play matches in any case.
Any age, any ability, we're in here. We'll get a go.
Yeah. I mean, that's what you are as a coach.
You'll be before me in age and ability.
In tennis, I doubt it. I was a badminton player, so it didn't really transfer very well. It's probably fair to say. But I mean, I think that's the definition really of a coach, isn't it? It's somebody helping somebody who's competing or performing, rather than, somebody who's doing it socially, or, it's not a leadership task. Coaching is about helping people get better. And I think that's often, well, not often, but sometimes forgotten in the coaching world, particularly a lot of the research that's done at a very junior level. In the end, it's about helping people get better, whatever level they're at. And that's a job.
Yeah, anyone can lead activity. I don't want to be condescending, but anyone can lead like sport activity. But actually, two things that have jumped out to me when Matt was introducing himself. So skill transfer, got excited straight away. So now getting into the coaching, and then I think you were along the lines of training that maybe looks and feels like the game, is the vibe I'm getting. So could you maybe just delve a little bit into skill transfer for us, Matt? Like how do you see that? How do you sort of operate around that? What are some principles for any tennis coaches listening?
Yeah, well, I guess maybe it's like how do I see the game versus what does training often look like? And again, to some extent, I have to generalize here because not everyone's training will look like this, but it's common enough that I think I can say this without mobs coming after me. But the game of tennis it's really dynamic and variable. You're moving between skills and within skills, attack, defense. You serve, you hit a forehand, you hit back, and whatever. It's chaos basically. You're in a constant state of deciding. There's decisions happening all the time, and so you have to be good in that respect. And it's in training. There's a lot of, if we think of maybe what a traditional tennis coaching lesson looks like, there's a lot of isolated practice, mostly in neutral, often without an opponent, often it's unopposed, and not much variability going on. So I feel like there's often a bit of a gap between the practice court and the match court. And so part of what me and my business partner Ian Ketteringham did last year was we developed a presentation and a workshop for coaches to get an idea or a flavor of the idea of representative learning design as a way of increasing the likelihood of making transfer from the practice court to the match court.
So if you're working with beginners, how does that look? Because people will go, you can't play games with beginners. So how do you go about developing that idea of a game with a group of beginners in your experience? What do you do?
Well, yeah, it's a great question. Whether if I'm dealing with like a group of 7-year-olds who are having their first tennis experience on a Friday afternoon after school, or whether I'm dealing with a group of adults on a Monday night who are having their first beginner tennis session, within the first 15 minutes, we have played a match, or your money back. I'm willing to say that we have played a match or your money back.
What a
Um,
tagline.
yeah, yeah. So, um, what we all we need really is to understand like what are some basic rules of the game. So, um, there's a boundary of some description in tennis. Um, the ball needs to cross like a line or a net of some description, and typically it can only bounce once. Um, so if it hits the transition line, the net essentially, uh, then you're going to lose the point, and the other person wins the point. If it goes out of bounds, then you're going to lose the point, the other person wins.
Mhm.
Or if it bounces twice, the other person wins. So um, that's all you need to know, really. And 7-year-olds, 6-year-olds, they can pick that up. And so we play a game in the first few minutes. Now, does it look like Roger and Rafa at Wimbledon with, Roger doing a slice serve out wide to Rafa's backhand, Rafa stretching to jab it back? No, it doesn't look like that. Does it look
No.
like Stefan Edberg doing a serve, coming in and placing a volley into the open space? No, it doesn't. We just scale it down, and it looks messy and chaotic, but that's what tennis is. We can even do it on the floor. Like there's such a thing called like floor tennis, where you're just pushing it back and forwards over a
Yep.
line. And
Yep.
of course, you can
Yeah.
have a match like that. We could have a match now across the
Mhm.
line, and yeah, 3-0 to me, whatever it is. And so straight away you can have a match. So that's what I do with like 7-year-olds. But if I was with an adult, we just scale the space, and we use different modified equipment. So we use like lower compression balls that don't bounce as much. They're not as fast through the air. So it slows the game down, but they can still touch your serve in, and maybe we scale the space down as well. Touch your serve in, couple of shots. Yeah, well, it hit the net, so that's my point, whatever it is.
Mm.
Doesn't have to look like the
So,
quote unquote perfect serve and the
Yeah.
quote unquote perfect
yeah,
forehand.
yeah.
So I'm rocking up. I'm a beginner, adult beginner, not very skilled, not very good mover. But within 15 minutes, I'm playing. I'm going to have some sort of competition. There's going to be a line or a net. I'm engaged in some sort of immersive type activity. So I think we could press stop there on the pod, and I think we've got some cracking outcomes. Like
Yeah.
sometimes it isn't difficult. So yeah,
So
great
I'd
way to
just
think
say,
about it.
I'll contrast that with tennis I took my son to when he was about 6 in Sheffield. Um, and he stood in a
Yeah.
line, waited for his go. He got to the front of the line, some hungover 18-year-old randomly threw a ball at him. He hit one back, hit threw another ball, hit it back, didn't care where it went. They didn't care where it went. He hit 3 balls, joined the back of the queue. And I've used this slide in presentations of this queue, typical queue, stand, wait for your turn. And my comment was, what did he learn in that session? To be a really good sword fencer, because he was bored stupid and he was just playing around with his racket, being a sword fencer at the back. And we went for probably 8 to 12 weeks, I would say. We stuck with it. Sunday morning, stupid o'clock. Got there, and then I said, he's not coming anymore. And I said, why not? I said, he's not played a game yet. You're not playing a game. Oh, no, he was going to go into games next week. Thank you. Goodbye. And now he loves tennis. He still loves tennis. He plays it all the time with one of his teammates and everything. But could never serve. That was his problem. But once he got it going, he was fine. But um, yeah, just couldn't initially get the serve going. But there was the experience there, which is completely different to that. So I think, I'm not sure who, I think it was Bruce Abernethy, maybe did the research on the first 100 hours, how crucial they are to somebody continuing to play the sport. And I think you've got it in one there, Matt. If you haven't played a game, you're never going to stick with it. You're not got, that's why you play, isn't it? You play games to have fun, compete, and learn. But if you don't play games, why am I bothering?
It's your old colleague Rod Thorpe, what he always says, it's the sensation of playing sport is, it's one of the things of TGFU, wasn't it? And it's so
Yeah.
important. On that as well, what I really like about Matt's example is that you don't have to be at a top level to feel that sensation of playing the game. Um, So, this idea of, you need to learn all the techniques first, then once you've mastered them, devoid of any game context, you then can go and play the game. Well, no, we can. So I might not be playing it to my full potential at this moment in time, but at least I'm engaged and I'm perceiving and all the essential, specifying information sources. So yeah, Matt, I'm really curious. So that might be a session for me and Ian. So when you're working with more, maybe, I don't know, higher performing players, like how would you get a bit more? And I'm going to use the word sophisticated, and I'm using that word because we're working alongside a brilliant PhD student, Sean Malcolm,
Yeah.
who's doing some great work. You might know him, but one
Yeah,
of his things is
know him a little bit.
talking. He thinks practice, so at more of a like a performance level, it needs to be more sophisticated. So even if we've gone beyond, um, drills and loads of repetitions and all these types of things, there still needs a sophistication. So it's not just playing a game, but we need to understand how can we effectively manipulate practice. So we're really focusing in on maybe some of those things that are inhibiting performance. So I don't know if you could talk to that a bit, like what would you do and sort of things you might think about.
Yeah, well, I think whether you're working with a more advanced standard player or less, or more novice or beginner player, I do think one of the things that is it's essential and it's meaningless to not have it is just a clear intention about what is it that we're trying to achieve here, because if without that intention, like um, whatever sort of philosophical lens you look at your practice through, what are you really doing? It doesn't really make any sense without that, whether you're coming from a ecological dynamics background or you're coming from a different world. So I think without that, it's like, well, what are you doing? Whether you're working with a novice or an advanced player. So for me, I guess like it's understanding that, okay, let's say I'm working with like a state league player or what might call a county standard player in the UK. It's we need to be clear on, well, are we trying to win more points or avoid losing more points, first of all, and then in what situations is have we got? So it's pretty much just 5 situations. Could be I'm serving, I'm returning, me and my opponent are both at the back of the court, I'm approaching it or being at the net, or my opponent might be approaching and is at the net and I'm trying to pass them. So it's pretty much they're the situations. And of course, in any of those, we could be in attack or defense. I'm sort of less and less interested in neutral now. Actually, that's something that's changed for me in the past
What do you mean?
year or
by
so.
What's neutral?
What do you
So
mean by
like
neutral?
so like there's a lot of rallying, like a lot of like neutral rallying, which is I'm pleased that you said like neutral. You sort of both looked at me like, what are you talking about? And often, like when I listen to other sports, it's like, well, either we're attacking or we're in offense or in defense. Like there's not much in between. But in tennis, there's this idea that we have to be good at rallying, just like maintaining the ball. But more and more that I watch and try and critically observe, I'm like, well, people
You're in
aren't doing that.
neutral.
It's like I'm either trying to attack or I'm trying to just avoid trouble or get out of trouble or something. But I'm not like, come on, Martin, we'll have a nice rally until one of us decides to attack. I just don't really see it happening as much. But that's a very common thing in the world of tennis. So it's to be in a neutral phase of play. But it's essentially to look at it through that lens of 5 situations and then are we attacking or are we defending? And there's different ways you can do that. And then just design practice around that in the most representative way possible, really. Like I probably start quite high up the scale of representativeness when I'm doing my practices, because I just think, well, let's see what it looks like, and if we need to tweak it and dial it back a bit or scale it back or whatever, then we can always do that. But I don't really start at a 1 out of 10, and then build it up. I start the other way around, more like, because that's what a match is like. The match is just pure chaos and a battle. So I just start there, and then if I need to scale that back, then I will.
So do you think the dimpy dumpy dumpy do, as I'm going to call it,
Neutral,
just
it's called
rallying,
neutral.
just yeah, the neutral, just rallying back and forward to each other. Do you think that's a way of not taking risks? So you're happy to have the stability of, nice and steady. We'll let them make the mistake. So we'll just, as long as I just keep getting it back, eventually they'll hit it in the net or they'll hit it out without me having to force force the issue or create instability by hitting it harder or hitting it deeper or hitting it more out to the side, the lines or anything. Is that why people have developed that style, do you think? Or why don't we
I think
hit
so.
the
I think
ball?
it's Yeah, well, I think it's in the name of high percentage tennis is what it's often called, or high percentage
Right.
principles, where it's like,
Yeah.
well, and it is a game of errors, it's a game of mistakes. People,
Yeah.
it's like I don't win by hitting 50 winners against you. I'll win by, you know, either you make mistakes by yourself or I put the
Mm.
ball in a difficult place where you break down. So for me,
Yeah.
the part of the reason why I'm less and less interested in neutral is because when I watch tennis, I just see essentially like two things are happening when there's an attack. I think this is my view anyway. Either like I'm trying to hit it so tough against you that you are jammed up by the ball, like, oh my goodness, like the ball's
Yeah.
assaulting me. And then that
Yeah.
breaks you down and it's like a disaster and I'll win the point. Or I'm
Mm.
trying to get you to stretch to reach the ball. Because
Yeah.
if you're stretching again, it becomes an emergency. So like if you're and this is not my language, this is borrowed from a Canadian tennis coach called Louis Caillé, who's brilliant. But yeah, it's the idea like that we could be jammed, we could be striking, which is we're happy with that, or we could be stretching. And when I look at it through like an ecological lens, and in terms of like the decisions, the opportunities for action that I have, if I'm striking the ball, I can do all sorts with it. Like I've got a good
Mm.
good touch on it. I could hit it over there, over there. I could hit it high, low, fast, slow, to in any number of ways. And my intention is to jam or stretch you basically because I know you'll be less able to deal with it. Now,
Mm.
if I'm jammed up, suddenly my options just disappear. They dissolve. They evaporate. So in that moment, I have way fewer opportunities for action. I have fewer affordances, to use that language, and same when I'm stretching. So for me, I'm always just thinking like, well, look to get a strike and look to stretch or jam the other person. Because if you're doing those
Yeah.
two things, as
Yeah.
simple as it sounds, you don't really need to be rallying and just playing it back and forth.
Mm. And that's by playing the game right from the word go. You're encouraging that straight away, win the point, like rather than
Mhm.
let's practicing our technique by rallying, or throwing the ball down and hitting it. So you're always responding or you're always trying to lead the lead the conversation sort of thing. I've got a comment. I was listening to the podcast Martin and Keith did with some of the MMA guys a couple of episodes ago. And I think Martin asked a great question. When does the punch start? And it made me think there is when does a shot start? Like so if we isolate the skill and we just drop the ball and having them hit to practice the isolated technique, that's not for me where the shot starts. So where do you where does that come as a question in tennis context, do you think?
Well, I think there's plenty of tennis courts and tennis clubs across the land that you could go to where perception and action are being divorced and decoupled.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, for me, it is quite essential to keep them together because all of that information that's out there is lost if the ball suddenly appears from the coach's hand 6 inches away from the player to just
Yeah.
smash it into oblivion or do whatever. So um, when does the shot start? It's I listened to that episode actually, and I thought it was a good thought provoking question and a good thought experiment.
Mm.
There's I don't have a very good answer probably, but what I do think is that um, when have we decided to hit the shot? So there's this idea in tennis that decision making happens early, and it actually, through chatting with Sean Malcolm, who you've mentioned, and another guy who's a tennis coach called Steve Whelan in the UK. He's a sort of very good ecological practitioner, I would say. And then also reading a lot of Duarte's sort of I can never say his surname. How do you say Duarte's surname?
Araujo. I'm calling him
Okay.
Araujo.
Arouge.
Okay. So reading a lot of his work has changed my view on that, because I think, well, actually, it's not an early decision. I might have an intention, but there's times when, first of all, it's definitely embodied cognition. Like it's happening. It's not like a computer that just like you will hit a ball cross court. But it's, at the last, there's no set moment when it's like I have made a mental event where the ball is going there and that's now fixed. It's not as changeable. If you've got a strike on the ball, right up to the contact, you could be like, no, I've seen something. The guy has moved, whatever, I'm going to change. So an example might be that, I was going to, maybe you've approached the net and I'm at the baseline. Maybe I was going to try and pass you by driving it down the line, but I've seen that at the last second, just before I touch it, you're closing the net even closer. So I just decide I'll just open my racket and lob you instead. So it's really, it's a good question. When does the shot start? It starts with all that information beforehand.
Yeah.
And but it's also there. Oh, it's open up until the very last second, until you've touched it. That's still there, which I think is a slightly different view than maybe most, or the status quo would have it in tennis.
Well, these sort of questions, it wasn't, I'm not going to take the credit, Ian. It wasn't me. It was, I think it was Scott Sivright, but who asked the question. But these types of, no, it's cool. These types of questions are really important. So, it's like, what's your model of the learner? What's your learning framework? These are really important questions that we should be asking. And really, it could be what it should be, day one of a coach education course, probably at a high level. But okay, you got a slide and it just says, when does the shot start? That is your day one learning content. Create questions, and because I think, as you have alluded to, Matt, saying some clubs in certain places might have a very specific outlook on that. And it really, what it aligns to is their worldview of what it means to play sport or perform in sport, what somebody actually is, as in, a model of a learner. So I think questions like that are so important. And when we start to unpack them from our own assumptions, we can really start to understand maybe more about where we're trying to go as a coach, and then how should practice align to deliver that. And just linked to that, I really like your thing. So sorry if I'm repeating this correctly, but essentially I think you've got 5 principles or things you're going to work on in attack, and then the reverse. So 5 in defense. So situations, yeah. So that's your framework. You've straight away got a framework about, right, this is how we're going to develop players. And I'm guessing it's quite a front foot, quite an aggressive style. You're attacking to win a point, as you said, not. So a really important message for coaches is, you can, for whatever sport you're working in, it doesn't have to be 5, but what are your 5 scenarios in attack? What are your 5? And then the opposite, what are the 5 in defense? And a lot of team sports, it will be transition as well. And then you just start developing your levels around that. So from, the way colleague Rusty Earnshaw would think about that. So what are your 5 levels on the first theme or the first scenario? What are your 5 levels, or however many on the second one? And what you're essentially doing is building a framework for coaching in that sport that's aligned to the intention of what you're trying to achieve as a player at that level, and then the intention for each session linked to that. So I just think it's a great way of working out what your framework for performance is, rather than week 1 we'll do a bit of this, week 2 we'll do a bit of this, and you're just going through aimlessly. You've not got your North Star of, this is what we're trying to achieve. I think it's so important.
Yeah, go on, Matt.
Is that a bit of tumbleweed there?
I was just going to say there's in the I don't know what it's like in other sports, but in tennis there's definitely a lot of termly plans that look like week one
Yeah,
forehands, week two
Yeah, yeah,
definitely.
backhands, week
yeah,
three serve, week four a volley, week five we're sort of running out of ideas now, doubles,
yeah.
week six match play, and then it's like you've waited 6 weeks to play a match. They probably can't play the match with the skills they've been given because
Mm.
it's all been so compartmentalized and isolated. It's sort of like devoid of any context, and yeah, I think it's probably quite prevalent still.
That's exactly what I was going to say. That'd be a school program, wouldn't it? Like when the teacher's doing the scheme of work and they've got
Yeah, yeah,
tennis, and you're not a tennis expert. You're probably a winter games player in England or generally people are team games players have become PE teachers, aren't they? Not very few are tennis specialists, I would say. So how do I do
If
tennis? Oh, week one, I'll do the serve. What can I do here? Well, I'm going to throw the ball up and land it in a hoop. So I've got to teach you how to throw the ball up first. And then we'll add a hit to it. And, that's the old fashioned way, isn't it? I think as you were saying, Marty, I was really fortunate enough to go through Loughborough with Rod Thorpe and Dave Bunker. And we did a bit of tennis, but the principles are the same in a net court game. You just get them playing a little game, as you said, over a net. And we were shown like you just throw it over the net. You throw it and you throw it and catch it, and you throw it and catch it, and you just get games going that way. So that the kids, you take away the technical problem of the racket and the ball, and you just get them playing a simple game of pass and move. Can you throw it, make it bounce twice in the court, or can you make them so that so on and so on, of them throw it out, and then you build in the racket after that. And I love that approach. I always use that with my kids. Always taught the students that, and there's massive activity from the word go, and you're learning to play a game, without the technical problem. We've done it in volleyball. You do it in volleyball, 1-in-1 volleyball games where you just throw it rather than try and do your digs and your sets and your whatever. So it's a lovely way of teaching. Teaching racket games, I think, is can be relatively simple at a lower level if you've just got some ideas um, of some principles. But I love the way that you talked about jamming people up and things like that, because really that goes back to applying the overarching principles of play, doesn't it? About creating space, denying space, and things like that, and
yeah.
penetration. Yeah.
The real
it's quite
skills of a dyad. Sorry, Matt. The real skills. Again, we spoke about this with Scott and Marco,
Yeah.
and then really the I'll call it technical techniques, which I don't mean that. I mean the skills. They're just the things you use to manipulate that space or
Yeah.
exploit that space. And it's back to Matt's point. It's embodied.
Yeah.
It's not something you do in isolation. So yeah, sorry, Matt. Good question here.
I was just going to add in that with the what I've found has been very effective when talking through this language of jamming, striking, or stretching is it's quite it lends itself well to affordances because it's very like I have to look down the other end of the court to see like is what I've tried to do having the intended
Yeah.
effect on the opponent, and
Yeah.
it's very obvious. Like children
Mm.
pick it up so quick, they're like, oh yeah, he's in trouble. Like he's stretching over there. It's a disaster. It could be forwards, sideways, could bounce up very high and he's stretching over his head. Could be
Yeah.
jammed because it's come really fast at him. Could be jammed because it's curving into him. Could be jammed because it's near his shoes and it's like, half volley sort of thing. And it's very
Mm.
visual, and so they can see it straight away. So it lends itself well to that.
Yeah.
Like inviting affordances,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
it lends itself well to just giving people lots of different options for deciding what they're going to do. So
Mm.
it's not like just constraining it and saying like you must hit this shot only to achieve it. Well, here's 4 different ways you could stretch them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here's 3 ways you could jam them. Whatever the thing is. So it all sort of like it just sort of works together quite well, if that makes sense.
Matt, where did you come across all the ideas of ecological dynamics or constraint-led approach in the first place?
Good. Good question. This will look like it was a plant, but I thought I better get this out just in
I
case.
know a ball is
well
coming.
done, yeah.
I could tell.
I can say that. This is why I live
So it's
in
covered in
Auckland.
it's it's covered in notes and dog ears and stuff. So yeah, that book, The Concentrated Set Approach, yeah, it
Right.
just made sense to me. And then from there just doing sort of deeper dives and stuff over the years and sort of trying to
I,
understand it more.
so what was your background? Are you university sports science or something, or?
So I did a degree in philosophy, and then
Oh,
I did a master's degree in psychology after that. And then I sort of like I actually flim-flammed around with a PhD, sort of try to work out what the theoretical underpinnings of some of the coach education structure in the UK were, but I was not really treating it like the way you need to treat a PhD. I was doing it like on the side at the end of the day of coaching, and that's really hard to do. I found, so I parked that after a few years. But it's something, as I said at the start, I'm sort of a coaching geek, or I'm a bit obsessed by it. Like I really want to know how can I be the best that I can, and so I think it's quite important to know like, well, what does the science say, what does the research say, and not just rely on like sort of a resilient folk pedagogy of like, well, we've always done this, so we'll just
Yeah.
keep doing it. To me, that's not enough. If there's a potentially better way of doing it where we can, accelerate people's development quickly, if we can transfer quicker and stuff like that.
What would
yeah.
you say the hardest bit of it's been, like hardest ideas or applying the ideas has been for you?
So I think the getting my head around affordance is more than so constrain to afford rather than constraining to constrain. That's been a shift that I've made over the years. So
Right.
much more affordance led, if that would make any sense, rather than
Yeah. Yeah.
constraining to constrain, which is what I would probably have more been doing like towards the start. And then yeah, probably in the last year or so, like when I've been trying to dig deep on the understanding and unpacking decision making and stuff, that's been quite hard to get my head around. So that's been another transition probably of thinking. Like that's different to the way I had thought about decision making previously, and how that emerges in again in the chaos of the game. And then but then and then the third maybe transition is just sort of going a little bit deeper and understanding, or trying to, as best I can, understand elements of ecological psychology a bit more, because I think that's understanding that interaction between the organism and the environment is obviously quite central
Yeah.
to this
Yeah.
stuff. Um,
Yeah.
so that's helped me, yeah, look at everything in a different light as well. So there's maybe three transitional phases, if that
Mm.
makes sense.
Yeah, it's interesting because people have said you can't use the A word; it's too difficult. The affordance word is difficult. Interestingly, I remember having a conversation with Duarte Aroge, about he talked about in a dynamic systems language, we really ought to talk about constraint to potentiate. He thought that was a better word because constraint sits within a dynamic systems idea, and affordances obviously sits within the ecological. And he felt that it didn't really work together, but we sort of stuck with it. We may well be wrong philosophically, but I like that idea as well. I think that was a real leap forward for us about can you constrain to afford, and definitely to create the invitations. And we talked a little bit about what do you want to achieve, isn't it? You talked about intentions at the beginning of being crucial to what you want to achieve. So can I design a game that invites them to take the opportunities or that we want them to take? And therefore, if if they can take them, brilliant. First of all, can they see them? And then can they take them? If they can't see them, can we add in a constraint? Can we constrain the task through an instruction or through a task constraint or whatever way we're doing it to make that affordance more obvious? So it's, you know, the principle of exaggeration that we talk about, that TGFU talks about as well. And if they can then get it, they can now see the opportunity but can't take it, follow the same principle. Can we then add constraints that help them to take the opportunity that's in front of them?
Yeah. Are they solving? Are you solving problems for the athletes or the players, or are you setting problems? I think that's really important. And all this in and listening to Matt really links back to Eric Reveld's paper, The Rich Landscape of Affordances. So I think what Matt's describing beautifully is this idea of like an ecological niche. So affordances are the I suppose dependent on the abilities available in a ecological niche. So if I'm 10-year-old kid going to Matt's sessions, from that ecological niche that he's creating, straight away I'm learning how to play the game. I'm learning about that, how to manipulate that one-on-one dyad. I'm learning about exploiting space, creating space, jamming. I'm becoming a very intelligent game player. And along the way, I'm going to be finding ways, as in skills, physical skills, to engage in that process more effectively, so I suppose the form of life Matt's creating and continuing to create and evolving all the time just through his own education and the players and the different experiences you're having with the players and whatnot is a really powerful way to go, I think. So yeah, I mean that's on more of a macro level. I think Matt was alluding to maybe more, understanding at a micro level. But yeah, I think so. That's what's striking me. I think it's really important and an important message for coaches. Ask yourself, this environment I'm creating on a macro and the day-to-day practice environment, what are the consequences in terms of player behaviours and as in skillful behaviours, motivation, identity, wanting to be there, all these different things, belonging. It's so important. So that's what I'm getting anyway. Sorry, Matt, I know you're there talking about it. Sorry. Yeah.
One of the things that I think is quite important from if I think about my role as like a coach developer as well, like with the work that I do, it's to try and make, which I'm just trying to link back to your questioning, which is to make stuff like this easily unpackable for the tennis coach who isn't going to sit and read it, and who isn't going to read, all of Platt's, articles on embodied cognition and decision making in sport, and going through all of that stuff. So part of my mission, or what I think is important, is to make it easily accessible, and that was what led me to do this present with my colleague Ian. We wrote this presentation for understanding representative learning design, and we just tried to put loads of practical examples of it in. We did it with an 8-year-old boy who was playing a few times a week. We did it with an adult beginner, and we did it with a state league or a county level player who's goes to college in America now playing tennis there. So we tried to show like, well, these are the ways that you can do it and bring it to life, so people can actually go away. They've watched the presentation, hopefully, and then they can go away at 4 p.m. and deliver their session with a bit more like, okay, well, can I, whatever I'm doing, can I maybe just dial it up a bit? Can I tweak it a little bit? Add in some more, repetition without repetition was another sort of part of it, because again, I think that's probably misunderstood in the tennis coaching landscape. The role of repetition. It's usually just repetition with repetition with repetition with repetition ad infinitum.
Really interesting. So do you have is this part of Tennis Australia's coach development program, or are you doing that off your own bat, would you say?
So we did it for the they have a Grand Slam coaches conference every year, sort of lined up with the Australian Open. And the theme was the power of play. So we wrote, developed two presentations. One was this one, and the other one was on pressure training, actually, and a sort of providing a model of pressure training, which again is just an important one because that's another dynamic that it's like.
I'd give a shout out to Tennis Australia a few years ago, who went into all the universities and said, "We'll give you all this kit." So they came to us and said, "Here's a load of nets, here's a load of different types of balls, here's a load of rackets, here's some little markers that you can make little courts with and everything." And then they came and worked with every first year student in our course. It was an unbelievable. It was, what a way to influence PE teachers to choose tennis when they get into schools, to give them the confidence to do it. And their manuals are like this thick, aren't they? Like some of their ideas around it. There's some really good people
Yeah.
around that tennis.
Yeah, there is, and just this year actually, they have moved towards introducing concepts like representative learning design in the. So I'm just delivering the level 1, which is called like the development coach qualification. It's like a Cert 3, and yeah, so in previous years it wasn't really touched upon. It was quite a linear methodology, but now we're introducing RLD and sort of bringing much more focus on it's called the shot in tennis, and through Tennis Australia call it the shot cycle. I'd just call it just perception action cycles, basically. So there's more emphasis on that as of this year. So that's, I think, a good development, I think.
I don't know where I got it from, but I've used a really powerful video from tennis. I think it was called Red Bull Tennis or whatever, but I don't know whether you've seen it, where they overlay a women's LTA tour. So Martin, they sort of watch these rallies, and then they've scaled the under 10s or under 12s. They've scaled the court so that the rhythm of the game is at the same pace, and they overlay it on top of each other. So you can see like the time and space you've got is the same in both the sports, wasn't it? I don't know if you've probably seen it, but I've used that with coaches in other sports to get this idea of scaling, to try and keep the time and space relationship. Because if kids are playing on a big court, they're not having to pick up the information from their opponent, because they can wait until it's halfway across and then start to move. Whereas you develop the skills, don't you? Like your perceptual skill, right from the word go. It's brilliant, absolutely superb. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. I did a bit of personal, like, just backyard research, I suppose you'd call it, last year, which was on a similar thing because, so we know that in tennis, like the world class standard is of like what a lot of professionals will do is the tempo, the time between I strike the ball and you strike the ball is about like it can be up to like 1.1 seconds, like baseline to baseline, but it's falling somewhere between 1.2 1.3 seconds for the best in the game, men and women. Now that's if you put a child on a 8-year-old. I got an 8-year-old and I put him on different size courts. So what we call a red court, which is quite small. It's like about 8 meters long, and then some what we call an orange court, which is a bit bigger. There's a couple of variants, but they get basically a little bit bigger each time, and so it's scaling the environment, and right through to a full size court. And when he was on a court that was, well, I thought the ideal size for him was the one that could get closest to 1.3. So he could get 1.4 seconds, 1.4 and change, 1.42 or whatever it was, tempo. on a certain size court. But as we got bigger and bigger, it became like 1.7, 1.8, 1.9.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't
Yeah.
sound a lot, that doesn't sound a lot, like
Oh,
0.4 of a
massive.
second, but it is massive, and it's evidently noticeable as well when you watch it. You're like, oh, the ball takes
Yeah.
ages coming across, and like you say, but um, I I just think like it's a good way of also showing or measuring, like, because there's often a rush in tennis to rush through this, like rush to the biggest court possible. But for
Yeah.
me, I'm
Yeah.
like, you're actually getting
Like
worse
proper
at the sport
tennis,
by
don't
doing
you?
this. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it's actually like you're actually getting worse. You're actually getting further away from the international standard by doing that. Because on the smaller court, you were rallying at
Yeah.
1.45, tempo. Well, we've gone
Yeah.
on this bigger court, and now you're 1.87 tempo. So you've actually got worse. So is this
So
definitely the way to go?
I think such
Brilliant.
an important factor for
Yeah.
the people who are designing junior sport is, can you try and develop the perception action skills that's going to be useful all the way along? Because you could argue if they play on a full court, they're not learning anything. It's funny, bizarre. I've just had an email pop up in the background, and it was from somebody, one of my former students, who we did this in netball, exactly this sort of thing in terms of how long does it take to get the ball from your hoop to the other hoop at the elite level? Like, and you ask the netballers, no idea. So how fast the game? How quickly do you move it? Well, we can scale that to look the same way. And we've used the idea of game intensity indexes in some of the invasion games. How long have you got when the ball comes to you before somebody comes and clatters you? Like in rugby or in football or in hockey or whatever. And it's exactly the same principles as that you're talking about there. So it might be too difficult to start with, but can we squeeze them to that 1.2? Like if they can't get there, but the more you do it, you become a product of your environment, don't you? You'll start learning to pick up the information from your opponent, and then you'll start to read where you need to move to and things like that. If you never put in that situation, you'll never have to do that. So when you eventually play at a higher level, you're having to learn that again from scratch. Well, that's just daft for me anyway.
It,
It's such a common
it,
sense thing, really.
it also on a tennis, from the tennis world, it also changes massively what your affordances are. Like if I'm an 8-year-old on a full size tennis court, standard tennis court, really the way for me to win if I'm against another 8-year-old is to like loop it up in the air really high so it
Yep.
bounces over the other person's head.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the game basically. Now, therefore, and if I know that, and I know that you're probably trying to do the same because you're an 8-year-old, what will I do? I'll stand really far back, and I'll just be like, I'll be quite good at just absolutely launching it up into the sky. We call it like a
Yep.
moon ball. It's just like going to the moon and then
Yeah.
coming down. But what you might not do is ever develop things about going to the net. How do I approach the net? What do I do when someone's at the net, and how do I pass them? Well, I've never faced
Yeah.
that before because normally my opponent is sat 5 meters behind the baseline in the next suburb. So we lose a lot of also those five situations. Serving,
Yeah.
returning, being at the back, approaching, or passing. And a
I
lot of the
don't, yeah.
dynamic in that is gone. Like attacking, an 8-year-old can't really hit an attacking serve on a full
Yeah.
size court because they're just not physically strong enough
Sure.
typically to do that. But on a smaller
And the other,
court, they can jam and stretch
yeah.
the returner. So
Other thing I'd say is, this is from my own feeble tennis, no tennis whatsoever. But if you put me on a smaller court, then to hit it hard, I've actually got to develop some topspin. Because if I just do that, it flies out of the court at the
Yeah.
back, that was my tennis. And because we played on an adult court when you were at, the 2 weeks of Wimbledon every year. Um,
Mhm.
because know how to learn how to put topspin on it to then bring it down to keep it in the court. But if I start on a smaller court with a foam ball or a sponge ball, then I can start to develop that ability. And again,
Thi-
tennis players are great
yeah.
at.
This is a fascinating point. Really a real eye opener. I mean, how many, considering as well, and I've been guilty of this, how many national governing bodies are scaling down for the right reasons, the right intentions, scaling down the competition. But it's the unintended consequences that they're not monitoring and probably not aware of. So just as another example, when we scaled down the rugby league game for primary ages in England, one of the things that the kids used to do, we called it round the world run. So they'd get the ball, they'd run backwards, and then to try and run around the defence, so they'd do like imagine like a J shape, but then doing that as you progress through the age groups is really not helpful when you're attacking.
But
You know, and I
solves the
know,
problem now, Martin. It solves the problem now because I can run around the defense far quicker than I can do by passing it down the line. One, it's too slow to
yeah,
pass it down the line.
but
And
it's
if
easy
somebody
to, you're not
but no, I
manipulating the
don't.
defenders though. But yeah,
But I succeed. I score. I
well,
score the try.
at that age, yeah,
it's a short-termist, it's a short-term
Exactly. Why
yeah,
wouldn't
thing, isn't it? You know, it's like a dead end.
to
It's
the,
dead end. After about a year or two, it's gonna be like, well, this is no good
yeah,
anymore.
yeah. So
But I got an example of this with one of my nephews who was playing a touch game, rugby union, not rugby league. But he went forward, got touched, had to give the ball away. So what did he do? He ran all around it. So he avoided touching anybody, but he ran round and scored in the corner. Thank you. I've scored a try. Because if I go forward, which is the correct principle of play, you take the ball off me. Why would I do that?
yeah, crackers.
So the rules, again, unintended consequences of rules that you've got to think about if we want them to play following the principles of play or whatever. So, but it comes back to when are they ready for that, isn't it?
Yeah.
And how do you do that? Well, I narrow the pitch, so I don't give them the space to be able to run round or whatever you do. Yeah.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
really interesting, and a real challenge for a lot of national governing bodies that are changing the game. So in the UK, Matt, they have mini tennis. A colleague who used to work at Sheffield Hallam, who's now at Loughborough, Anna Fitzpatrick, looked at. You might have seen some of her research. She's done some work around mini tennis, and I think it was understanding either depending on where you had excuse my ignorance, what's the line in the middle?
The centre line,
The centre
the
line. There
service
you go.
line.
Look at that.
That's complex, Martin.
That was really complex. It influenced whether they'd use a backhand or a forehand. I can't remember exactly. We'll put a link to the paper in the show notes. But yeah, again, and this was again unintended consequences from the national governing body. They just weren't aware. So yeah, fascinating. And again, it's back to this idea of an ecological niche. What behaviours is it affording, and what behaviours are normative and accepted in terms of that performance setting? So yeah, a real challenge, definitely. Matt,
I think there's just
go on.
oh, sorry,
Go on.
go.
No, you
I was
go.
going to say, I think for tennis, you know, I think it's so important that people play quickly, and so looking at it through this ecological lens can facilitate that because you can play very quickly versus a different approach, which might be like, well, you're not good enough to play, and we have to learn all these techniques and get perfect and all this stuff before you can play a match. Well, that's not good enough because why? How boring that I have to come for 12 weeks of tennis before I'm allowed to play a match. I want to play now. And also, there's now these challenges in our industry from pickleball and paddle tennis,
Oh yeah.
where they are essentially like a scaled version of tennis. And so it's like, well, why would I sign up for 12 weeks of private lessons and spend hundreds of pounds for that when I can just go and book a court and play straight away with my mates? So I think the tennis coach and the tennis operator and the tennis industry has a real obligation to make tennis playable very quickly.
So it's been interesting if Keith was on this call, couldn't he? Because he's taken that up with Anna, his wife.
I'm walking football, yeah.
Yeah. But it comes back to that traditional way of the game was really difficult because it was so hard to serve for a young kid, wasn't it? It's really hard to get the ball into the court with an overarm serve from somewhere that's miles away. So you never have a rally. So it's like if you ever win your own serve, that was when you started to know you're quite good. I used to think, like if you could win your serve, but you don't bother having rallies. So why do we have, why would you start that you've got to teach the overhead serve? Drop it and hit it, or whatever on a shortened court, so that we can just get the rally going with a phone, But I think tennis have been really good at that, to be fair. I think, and probably as you say, because they've had to through their own survival, I guess. But
there's so many. I mean, I do think that it's in like the serve is, mathematically it's the most frequent shot, clearly, because it starts every single point, doesn't it? So that the serve happens 100% of the time. So like, and then the return is the second most frequent shot. But of course, it's not guaranteed because the other guy might ace you. The other person might get the ball past you. If you get your serve in, then and the return goes back in play, then the server's like next shot, basically the third shot of the rally is then the next most frequent, and so on in order like that. So there's a real imperative. It's really important to spend time on that shot because just statistically it's important. And there's so many ways that we can do it. So like you said, you could just go underarm, but that's within the rules. The rules just say the ball must be struck from the hand. It doesn't say anything about being overarm. It's just that usually there's an advantage at a high level, which is what we see on TV of people serving overarm. But we've also seen, the likes of Nick Kyrgios doing underarm serves and being effective with it, and that's actually brought it. More players do that in the game now. You could also just start with an overarm throw, just launch it in overarm throw into the box. You could give people 3 serves rather than 2. You could make the service box way bigger. You could lower the net. You could move them further forwards rather than having them on the baseline, moving to the service line. So there's like you're only limited by your own imagination with that, really.
But also
and the players, they
the cultural conventions of the sport as well. I think that's it, and the expectation that this 8-year-old is playing a proper game. They've got to do it properly. It's a bit like the underarm shot in basketball, isn't it? Like, the world record of the most continuous free throws is underarm and throwing it that way. But nobody will do it because it's just, oh no, you just don't do it like that. But I think tennis has the same problem as cricket has, is you can't play a game in cricket until somebody can bowl and can bowl somewhere near the stumps. Otherwise, you just don't get a game. And this is a real problem down at 7, 8-year-old. But, and then you get people enforcing the rules that they've got to bowl from 20, they don't shorten the pitches and they don't allow the kids just to come and do it. And I was having a conversation with New Zealand early in the week about why don't we just go back to allowing underarm bowling for little ones? If you can't bowl overarm, just get it going underarm. That's how we all, like you did in the street, didn't you? Or in the park, your dad did it with you. And then when you can bowl overarm, great. Now we go to that. But tennis is the same thing. Like, so you never got a game because you couldn't get the service equivalent of the ball. So we can serve in, we can't have a rally.
There's very few people I've met who can't do an over. Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say very quickly, that's the beauty as well of working with kids. Well, if you're prepared to let go a little bit, because they'll come up with things, back to Matt's point before, that you never thought about because they're not yet constrained by cultural boundaries of, we should be doing this, we should be doing that. They'll come up with things that we would, one, never think of, and two, if we did think of it, we wouldn't dare repeat for fear of looking like idiots, in front of your colleagues. So that's why it's great, because they just really stretch and challenge, or again, if you allow that type of thing in your coaching environments or the coaching environments that you're creating. So yeah, sorry, Matt, go on.
I was just going to say, like, I really, as I said earlier, like I try and start at I often start my stuff more at the chaotic and open end of the sort of dial of representativeness, as we might call it. And so I'm more often am having a serve overarm than underarm, because I think for the returner, it changes the trajectory that the ball comes in on. So it changes like what you see, and again, you perceive and you act, and so it changes things. And there's very few people if you have a toolkit of ways of manipulating the space and the environment. There's very few people who can not go like a tap overhead. Like if you put the ball and the
Yeah,
racket very close together and just do that, yeah, it's
yeah,
going over. If you stand a meter and a half away from the net, it's going in. If you drop the net lower, it's going in. If you make the service box big, it's going in. So you
yeah.
can straight away make it quite highly
Right.
representative just from that serve and return perspective.
Yeah.
Just with a bit of manipulation of the environment, really.
That's my second serve. Um, I was going to say we better wrap this up soon, but what about one-on-one coaching where you are working with one individual? How do you go about that? Do you become the opponent in that? And what's the advantages of that, and what are the disadvantages of that, would you say?
Yeah, well, I'm an active participant in it as the opponent. So yeah, and again, it's just I'm always looking at it through this lens of like, what's the player's intention? Hopefully it's to strike the ball, so they have options like, oh, I can actually do multiple things, up to the point of
Yeah.
contact. And my intention will be to stretch or jam them. So if I'm looking through that lens, then you need an opponent at the other end, because it doesn't really make sense. You can't jam an empty court, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that it's having an opponent, and then and that's me, and we're playing points usually, and it's just going to be, what's the one thing that you're trying to do here, or the one or two things, whatever it is. Okay, let's play, and whether we're just playing open points, or whether we've changed the space or the rules or the task, whatever it is, in various ways to guide the players towards that information, and then help them achieve that intention. So yeah, it's quite quite faithful to that approach, I would say. Yeah, I don't know if that's a good answer or not, but yeah, it's
I-
it's
it's just,
definitely opposed. I also, from a personal perspective, I'm just like, I like playing tennis, so I get really bored. If I had to
so
stand there and drop a ball next to someone, I'd be like, after about five goes, I'd be like, all right, can we move on now? Have you got the feeling? Let's go.
Yeah.
so
I
you,
think
you've
I think
got
this
the
is different
perfect.
here. Like I remember the days at Sheffield Allen when you used to be working with the students, and if it was like they're doing a game and it'd be a 4-on-5, they'd join in to make it. I'm like, is that the best use of you as a coach? And what are you noticing when you do that? Like, can you
Yeah,
notice things as well? All these different things. I think maybe in tennis, because it's 1v1, maybe more useful considering everything else we've discussed. Actually, being if you're good enough, actually taking part, and because you can be very intentional about how you're trying to manipulate the. So it's the old constrain the attack to work on the
yep.
defence. Do you know what I mean? So I think in this situation it'd be very useful.
I think Matt's got it perfectly. Get
Yeah,
somebody else to pay him so that he can play tennis. It's a huge win.
yeah.
I've
Ian
monetized,
is
I've monetized
joking.
my
If
hobby,
anyone,
basically. That's all it's
yeah,
about.
yeah,
You
yeah,
could,
yeah,
absolutely. Why not?
yeah,
But I think it's a really interesting one on that one-on-one situation, isn't
yeah,
it? Because I mean, I was somewhere a while ago, and there was tennis courts there, and it was one-on-one, and it got the bucket of balls, that upside down tray, which I think is really clever. Um, and it was just drop, hit, drop, hit,
yeah.
drop, hit. You see that on Instagram, on Twitter, X all the time. Don't you? Watch this drill. It will shoot. You only got to be able to
Yeah.
do this. It's rubbish, really. So, but I think he's a skill involved in matching. You obviously have to be skillful enough to match your what you do to them, don't you?
Yeah.
There's no point you destroying them all the time. Well,
I
there's a
would, I
lovely
would even on
training.
that
Yeah.
on that one, and I even like I really try and highlight when they've done it well. Like, probably if you're a beginner, you're not really going to hurt me as if I say I'm a county standard player or something. Like, I'm you're not really going to be able to hurt me. So I have to do some acting, really. So
Yes.
I'm not only just, oh yeah, I'm here rallying, whatever, blah blah blah. I'm really making it highlighting it, emphasizing it, making it obvious that oh my,
Yeah.
making it look visual so they can sort of start to be attuned to that, like, oh yeah, he actually is in trouble.
Yeah, brilliant. The thing I thought of there was related back to the last chat, was that you don't want to suffocate your charge, your learner. And that's the same thing, isn't it? It's giving them the space. But anyway, that was a brilliant conversation, Matt. Thank you
Yeah,
much for coming on.
Pleasure.
I've
Thanks for the
learned a lot
invite.
again. Yeah.
yeah.
Brilliant.
It's fascinating, Ian, isn't it? The amount of I don't know what the right word is. Self learners, self-directed
Yeah.
learners. Is that right? Like Matt and
Yeah.
we've had several people on recently. Like blows your mind. You're like, wow. Just so yeah, it's really impressive, Matt. And I'm just glad you're fighting a good fight and doing some good work over there in WA. Yeah, nice.
Yeah. Brilliant. Superb.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thanks again, Matt, and good evening, good night.
Brilliant.